Hi, my name is Alyssa. I'm with Stories and Spoilers podcast. This is Midnight, my co-host, and I am so excited to introduce you to my amazing guest on this episode. Say hi, Michaela. Tell them more about you.
Hi, my name's Michaela. I am on Bookstagram at Mika Books, but also I recently started a podcast, My Little Book Love podcast, and I love to read romance, fantasy. I love going to book events and just honestly just book shopping and talking books and just making bookish friends. So I'm just so happy to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. You are like the human equivalent of coziness, and I was saying that you're like a cinnamon roll. You're just so warm and kind. And all of my followers, I hope you guys please check out their page, both the podcast page as well as your Bookstagram. You guys can always find me at Stories and Spoilers, the podcast, and my personal book blog page, which is just Cozy Soul Reads. But today we are going to be discussing all things book tropes, book icks, as well as just some of your unpopular bookish opinions as well, to give you a little taste of what I will be planning for the future. But I definitely plan on having you on again, Michaela. Spoiler alert, guys. She will be back. She will be back. So this will not be your only serving of this
Oh gosh.
wonderful cinnamon roll here. But let's break the ice. So, what is your favorite book to film adaptation and what made it so good?
Okay, this is honestly, it's not even that it's a really, really good
Mhm.
adaptation. I just love Twilight. I really don't think I've had a podcast so far where I've not talked about Twilight. And it's just honestly, the film, like the quality is not that great, right? Like we know the budget wasn't great, the acting's not that great. I just think for
Wow.
me, it was so nostalgic
Mm,
because that was the first book that got me into kind of like I guess the book that made me realize that you can make friends by reading. It was the
I
book
get
that
that.
like I guess reading it around school because I mean it was like 2008. So reading it
Mhm.
around school, the book was just really hard to get. Everyone was passing it around and like if you read it, you kind of were connected to more people, right?
I agree.
Yeah, so
I
I
agree.
guess when the movie came out, um, the friends that I had made because of Twilight, like we went to the movies together. Like my mom would take us to like the midnight premieres for the movies and just that memory of waiting in line and being with so many. I had never been to like book conventions and I was still like what, like I don't know, I was like a little preteen or teen and it's just like being part of something bigger than yourself is just so it's exhilarating. So maybe it's
Yeah.
not even the quality of the movie or the storyline's kind of like whatever too, but it's just so nostalgic. It's kind of so cozy to me, like just a
Mm.
comfort movie. What's
Whenever I
yours?
think of Twilight, I just think of ah.
Oh, I know.
It's like,
Oh, I
hey,
love the
looka.
soundtrack too. It's so good.
Oh my God. I'm sorry for the music that you had decided. I don't know if it was a song, like a siren song on steroids or crack, but like that was my rendition of the Twilight iconic like it's just it's a sound, it's a vibe. If you know, you know. When the
Yes.
color everything was like green, it was like this sickly green in the first movie, and then New Moon was like brown and orange,
Yes.
and then Eclipse was like gray. Breaking Dawn was like very like I think it was like white and red, and it was very
Yeah.
tan when they got to their honeymoon, and then you finally got to Breaking Dawn Part Two, where you got the
Uh-huh.
little vampire baby
Oh my
Renesmee,
gosh.
demon nightmares.
She was so
I
bad.
he was horrifying. But the books, oh, I'm gonna confess something right now. For shame, for shame. I actually didn't read all the books. I only read Twilight and New Moon. It was the first time I ever saw a book that was very large, and I thought,
Uh-huh.
no, ma'am. No,
No.
ma'am. I
No.
read all the Lord of the Rings books. I read all the Harry Potter books, but for some reason, Breaking Dawn, or was it Eclipse? There was a
Uh-huh.
book that it got much
Oh my,
larger than the other
yeah.
books. And I was like, no,
No, you're like say it in 100 pages or less.
no. I
Let's
said
wrap it
immediately,
up.
no. It was a no. It was a no for me, big dog. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I did read The Host by Stephanie
Oh,
Meyer.
that's so good and underrated.
It
Like
was
no one
actually my
talks about
first
it.
big girl book where it was
Yeah.
like two personalities in one body. And then I learned about what was it? It was bipolar disorder. It was something where you have like different personalities inside, but they're
Yeah.
both valid.
Uh-huh.
but it was like from like a sci-fi, like it was an alien inside of her body, but it was like that alien had a heart, I had like a soul, and she had
Yeah.
memories. I was like, well, it was giving like Moon Knight. I don't know if you've seen that Disney Plus show, but it's a
Mm-mm.
man where he has to like at night he has to chain himself down to his bed because he wanders, like he sleepwalks. But what he
Hmm.
doesn't realize is that he actually has two personalities, and they have two very different lives and
Yeah.
skills. And one of his personalities has this power of this Egyptian god where he serves, and at night he fights, and he's a badass, and he has no fears. And then his himself during the day he works in a museum, he's very soft-spoken and shy, so it's kind of like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
But instead of them destroying each other, they come to kind of almost protect each other, and they have similar value. It's a very interesting story.
Oh,
And for them to become whole, they have to almost accept each other so they can become strong. Oh, it's a very interesting
that
story. Like
sounds crazy.
it is
Yeah.
very, and Oscar Isaac plays both characters.
Uh-huh.
It's amazing. It was one of the best. It's a comic book to show adaptation. So to me,
Uh-huh.
it is a little bit like a book to film adaptation. Um, but The Host was one of my favorite like
Oh, it's so
film, like book to
good.
film adaptations. Yeah. It's so hard to just to find an actor who can play two very different characters in one
Hmm.
person. And she was in love with two different men because she was two different people.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I do not remember. I was telling you, I don't remember books after I've read them. I've not
Mhm.
read this one for years, but I remember distinctly like the part where I don't know if this is a spoiler.
It's
I
okay.
mean,
It's
there's,
this. That's what we're here
okay,
for. We do stories and spoilers.
okay,
And spoiler
possible
alert, guys! There's going
spoiler.
to be spoilers
Yeah.
discussed in this episode for sure.
Which,
Yes.
okay, I don't know the names of them anymore, but obviously, like, they're like kissing, and the other
Mm-hmm.
girl that's inside of her is like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, you're kissing her, and she slaps him. And I'm like,
Yes.
how do
Yes.
you write that? Like, that was just like brilliant.
I
Like, reading that for the
psychologically, that was a really good twist where she like I think she
yes.
punched him
Yeah,
because
like
he was
she,
kissing her, but it wasn't
it
her.
wasn't her, it was the other one. Yeah,
And he
crazy.
knew it wasn't her because when he kissed her, he knew the kiss was different.
Yeah.
That's such a that's such a that and you know what? That's a really good like question to be like,
Hmm.
would you know if there was an a you know that question like if would you still love me if I was a worm?
Power
That's the
worm.
same
Yeah.
question because her alien form was like a little light blob, but it was so
Yes.
pretty. She's like a little light blob. She's like a little light worm.
Yeah.
And when it comes to sci-fi, you have to really love the writing because you kind of have
Yeah.
to like elevate your brain. You know, if you think about it too much, it gets
Yeah.
weird. If you think about it too much, like if you think about Twilight too much, Edward becomes abusive, Jacob becomes creepy, the Cullens are dead, and
Yeah.
they don't really have like to them, like Bella is like a 12-year-old because all of them
Yeah.
are like hundreds of years old.
And isn't that weird? I don't know.
So
Yeah,
Bella's like a
it's kind of weird.
child in
Mhm.
comparison to them. You know what I mean? It's almost like when people say like you're mature for your age.
Yeah.
That's the vibe. If you really think about it, like the Cullens were much older than her. Like
So
she
weird.
was always vulnerable. The power
Yeah.
imbalance was insane. Like she was not on their level until like the last film.
Yeah, the power balance. Oh, that's very
You
interesting to
think of,
think
you know,
about.
if you think about it, she was never really safe.
Okay. But
You
have you
know?
ever seen somebody break down the timeline of Twilight to be like, okay, it's insane. I wish I had it in front of me so I could show it to you, but the whole thing happens within like a 8-month period.
You're wrong. Are you
Yes,
serious?
no, I am
No.
serious because like I mean it's like within a year at least, but
That's
like just the time
crazy.
between like everything happening is so condensed. But also she is a teen, so maybe it's just like
I couldn't
and
imagine
yeah,
marrying someone I liked as a teenage. I mean, listen,
no.
people end up with their high school sweethearts and they're very
Yeah,
happy. But if he was a vampire and he broke my car so I couldn't go see my friend, if you remember,
crazy.
you remember. Edward broke her car so she wouldn't go see Jacob.
Crazy. And he was a stalker. Like he was watching her at night and stuff. You know what I
He
mean?
was. He
Okay,
was.
there was
It was
this
Midnight Sun. My girlfriend tried to
yeah,
read that and she said it was literally just him like watching her and like wanting to eat her,
he didn't
not in
even
a
like
sexy
her.
way. Like he wanted to consume
Yeah,
her. He wanted to eat her, like Butcher and Blackbird style. Like if you know, you know. Like there's a scene about accidental cannibalism. It was an accident, but Edward actually
Ugh,
wanted to eat his girlfriend. Like he wanted to consume her. I was like, oh,
yeah. Okay, there was
oh.
someone made a reel. I shared it to my story the other day because they were like, would Edward Steele love Bella if he could read her mind? And the answer is
Mm.
literally no, because the only thing he liked about her was the fact that like she was interesting because he didn't know what she was thinking. But also, like, I guess I kind of said like it was peaceful for him to not have to
Ooh.
worry about reading her mind and stuff. But also, like, I think he only liked her because of the fact that like something was different and also she smelled really good. Like he
Mm.
wanted to eat her. But like
Like a lava cake,
yeah,
like
like a
a
lava
Bella
cake.
lava cake. He just wanted to like you know people's like you look like a snack. She literally looked like a
Yeah,
snack. Like she
yeah.
she was
He
like
wanted to
that
eat.
midnight ice cream, you know? He was like, I could just eat you up, but I won't because I love you and I want to see you tomorrow. I always loved Emmett. He was playful. He was there
He
for
was my favorite
Rosalie.
too.
I
That's
loved me. You know, we need a big boy. I loved me some Emmett. I was like, okay, it's cuffing season. I loved Emmett because he
really
was
was the
always
best.
there for Rosalie. With her trauma, that was one of
Yes.
the best scenes in Breaking Dawn. Was was it Breaking Dawn or was it Eclipse when she tells Bella her backstory?
Yeah, I think Breaking Dawn because it's she's like they get closer because of the baby. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah. What an
And
interesting
then Rosalie was
backstory.
like, "Girl, like at least you can have kids. Like I can't."
Yeah.
She was like, "Literally, I became this out of like a traumatic place of pain. Like she became a vampire, not even by choice. Like that was
No.
so sad. I was like, even Alice Carlisle. There's like so many vampire stories where I wish I could see a romantic lead that's like Carlisle because he had so
Yeah.
much control of
Yeah.
himself, you know. But also Carlisle was kind of manipulative. Like he
You
turned
think so,
everyone so he
right?
wouldn't be alone. Like he
He was
caught them when they were
lonely.
sick and hurt. That's kind of bad. That's kind of bad. Bad Carlisle. Bad Daddy Carlisle.
He's
I
a
was just like,
bad
he's
man.
a bad boy. He was
You
trying
know
to act like he was
who's
a good boy,
really,
but he's not a
you know
good
who's
boy.
bad in a bad way is Charlie.
Oh,
Like literally, like I would like I don't
Charlie's
know.
having a
There's something about
renaissance.
it.
Charlie's having a renaissance, okay? All the
Yeah,
girly pops say that as they've gotten older, they've realized Charlie was the real catch.
he really
Personally,
was.
as a lesbian, I will have to say this. Jacob any day of the week.
I
I liked him.
know.
He's my toxic pick. I liked
Oh,
Jacob.
were
I
you
liked
Team
him in his
Jacob
long hair
before?
era. I loved him. I
You've
loved
always
him.
been Team Jacob?
Yes.
No
Yes,
way.
I have. I because he looked so snuggly. And I liked when she was hurting and sad. He was there for her during New Moon.
Well, he
When
took
she hit her
advantage.
head on that rock. Like when she
No,
hit her head on that rock, he was right there for her. He was right there for her with his pecs
oh,
glistening. I loved how like he was so compassionate until he kissed her in Eclipse and it was very forced and I was like, ugh, wrong.
very manipulative.
But when he like what was it, imprinted on Renesmee, I'm like, wow, I
He
really can't
imprinted
come
on her
back from
baby.
this.
You know what? He
I
gets that vibe that's like, where my hug at? Where my hug? You
no.
know, like that's the vibe he gives. It's like,
No,
where
he
my hug
when
at?
it's like I'm gonna go take a shower real quick. Talk to you later. He's like, without me. I'm like,
Yeah,
I burn
without
it all
me. That's
down.
what he
No,
gives.
that yeah, he you know what he does give that. I will say like book to film adaptation because I didn't read the Twilight, the rest of the books. I don't know if
Yeah.
the book Jacob is accurate to film Jacob.
Hmm.
Maybe then again, maybe I just love Taylor Lautner. Maybe it was just the
You know,
actor who played the character who I love.
there's a
I just
positive.
love Taylor married another Taylor. He married another person named Taylor. That's so cute to me. I don't care if it's
I
cringe. I
love it.
love that man. I love
Taylor and Taylor.
him. I will say that. Book to film adaptation, Twilight, that's a good choice. The Host, I haven't
Hmm.
seen it again in a few. I used to get it from the library all the time. I feel so
It
bad
is
for
so
people at my
good.
local library because they were never gonna get it because I was always watching I
They
was
had no
always
chance.
watching that movie. It was always taking my library card. That was the most consistent movie taken out. I also wanted to ask you, what are some of your book icks? Speaking of imprinting on a baby, what are some of your book
Oh,
icks?
I kind of wish I would have thought about that one. Imprinting on a baby. Yeah, that was my number one.
Mm-hmm.
No,
It's
I
a good
guess
pick.
This is kind of weird, but if a book, okay, I don't know if this isn't really about what the book is about, but if a
Mm,
book is not edited well or the formatting is weird, like I can't
okay.
do it. And I don't know
Okay.
why. Like, I think that I've always been someone that wants to like proofread other people's stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so my mind is still in that. Like I was almost an English major. Like I took a lot of English classes in college and I love English, right? And so like I'm reading through this and there was an arc. I'm not gonna say any names, but there was an arc I started recently, and I literally was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't. Like, I kind of got stuck at the first maybe two chapters because I read a sentence over
Ooh.
and over, and I even was reading it out loud, and I'm like, this, it doesn't make sense. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
arcs aren't like finished copies, but it was just like, it was the way that she was writing. I was like, where I just can't like, I can't get on board with it. Like, it's not clicking in my mind. It's making me like,
Got you.
I don't even know what's happening in the story because I'm like focused on this. So
Yeah.
that's kind of for me, it's just maybe like if something doesn't feel like if it feels like it doesn't flow, like if there's
Mm.
no flow, it's got to go.
Insta love for me. I can't. If they make eye contact
Mm-hmm.
and they're already in love, but there's been like no,
Yeah.
like, I need you to have something in common.
Yeah.
Like, I need you to have a conversation. Like, it can't
Mm-hmm.
just be like, I saw you and that's it. Because for me, it feels like it's not earned, you
Mm-mm.
know? Like, speaking of grammatical errors, names I can't pronounce,
Oh,
names that are
equal
just long
openness.
to be long and make no freaking sense. Like, my name is like uh, Indigo Rockchild Eskimo Elia
Mm-hmm.
Starface. And I'm like, but then they spell it a certain way, or there's like, I don't, and then I'm like, and then I hear people review the book and everyone says the name differently.
Yeah.
I'll say it right now for everyone who loves this character. And I know there's gonna be listeners on here. Oh, this is how you say his name. This is how you say his name. Rice or Reese.
Resand. Okay, but I'm an audiobook girl. So like the only way I know how to pronounce things is the audiobooks. But you
I've
have
been
to
calling that
pay to
man
know how to
Reese's
read it.
Pieces for years. I don't
Reese.
care. I don't care. I imagine him as a Reese's Pieces cup for like 2 years because
And
he's
I think
sweet and misunderstood.
I mean you're
Spoiler
not
alert.
wrong.
Spoiler
Spoiler
alert.
alert.
He's a good
Spoiler alert.
man. He's a good man. I loved the
Uh-huh.
first two books in that series. I haven't finished it yet because there's been so much hype around it. Um
Oh,
and I'm scared that I'm gonna read the series and it's not gonna be as good as I thought it was, you
yeah.
know? That's why I stopped. I stopped at the second book and everyone's crying and like throwing the book across the hall and like they're feeling all these things. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, oh, yeah, I love Reese. And what happened in chapter 48, that was crazy. Yeah, no, I'm so
Okay,
fake for that. I actually
listen,
don't know what happened.
have you ever seen a Cinderella story with Hilary Duff? Okay,
Yes.
the dad says this quote, don't let the fear of striking out keep you from playing the game. And that's what I'm going to tell you about that book.
Wow.
Like, you know what? That's
Wow.
insightful. I'm
That's a
pretty,
very
like,
good quote.
you know what?
That's a very good
That's a
quote,
great quote.
actually.
Don't let it stop you from reading the book. Like, that's where I am with Colleen Hoover. I won't read her because I feel like it's overhyped and I
Mm.
just like, but I guess with the ACOTAR series, like A Court of Thorns and Roses, like everyone is like chapter 55. Like there's yeah. And it's like, can we
Yeah.
not? You know, like
Yeah.
it does build it up too much that you're kind of gonna be like, was this it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like there's
I
nowhere to
would rather
go.
you tell me like your favorite quote. That
Uh-huh.
way I can like get the vibe for what is coming. I'm the kind of
Yes.
girl where like if you tell me a quote from a book and it's really good, I'll read like 400 pages. I don't care
Yeah.
because I know that that beautiful line is coming and I want to understand the context of like what was happening for
Yes.
them to say that. Like what I think there's a quote where it's from another Sarah J. Maas book where it's like to the stars who listen. It's something like that. It's
Yeah.
something that's such a beautiful line. I'm willing to
Hmm.
read entire series just to get to just to get to that line. Like
Yes.
A Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare was one of the first big fantasy books I ever read. The writing was so poetic. It was like steampunk London.
Oh.
It was like a guy who can see ghosts who's literally haunted by his past and his best friend has like um he has to take the substance to stay alive for health reasons.
Uh-huh.
So it's almost like a metaphor for people who are born with an addiction because of their parents. And if they
Yeah.
were to stop, it would affect them really badly physically. That's like a
Yeah.
metaphor for that character. And then you have a female main character who falls for both of them for different reasons.
Hmm. That's
And she doesn't
crazy.
necessarily choose one over the other because they don't want
Uh-huh.
her to have to choose. But at the same time, she can't be with both.
Hmm.
It's such a beautiful three books. Like those
Oh.
three books was one of the most original fantasies I've ever read because both boys loved each other like friends and they loved
Oh.
her just in different ways.
Hmm.
So when she had to choose, it broke your heart because you did love both of them for different reasons, you know? Such a good book. Like
Oh.
that's what Edward and Jacob could have been, where you saw the pros and cons of both guy and what if they
Hmm.
were friends? That's a book I would love to see. What if Jacob and Edward were friends and Bella
Oh.
had to choose and she loved them both for different reasons?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That would
Mm-hmm.
be so good. That makes me think of that movie. There's like a movie that has Kristen Stewart when she was younger. And like
Hmm.
it's like a spy movie and there's two boys and they're both friends with her and she like both of them like her. I don't know. Isn't that
Put in the
interesting?
comments, guys, if you know what movie that is, because I feel like it's on the tip of my, because I feel like I know what you're referring
Yeah.
to. It's
And
like
they're
a
breaking
hidden
into a
memory. But
bank.
if anyone remembers that movie, please put it in the comments because that would be very cool to hear about. Kristen Stewart has been doing some pretty cool movies as well.
Yes.
I was telling my partner I would love to see Twilight remade,
Mm-hmm.
but in college,
Mm-hmm.
and I would love to see it gender swapped. So like two women
Oh.
in love
Yeah.
with the same guy, and one's a wolf, one's a
Um,
vampire.
that would be so good.
And maybe instead of the wolves being in the like being more like middle class, what if the wolves were more like rich and wealthy and went
Mm-hmm.
back like generations and were also native to the land, and the vampires were the ones who were kind of scraping by, you know what I mean? Like I would love
Yeah.
to, because the vampires are always so wealthy. It would be nice to see vampires who were like middle class. Like it would be very
Yeah.
cool that they had to play it very low.
But
I'm
now
just saying.
there
I'm
is a
just
gender
saying.
swap one. What is
Yeah.
the, so there's a gender swap one she wrote that's got like a different, it's like a green apple on the cover. I do not know the name of it.
Yes, I
Is
have
that
heard of that
similar?
book as well.
Is
I
that,
think it's like isn't his name like instead of Bella, it's like Bo. It's something like that.
oh, so it changes it in a weird way, not
Where's my
like,
partner when I need them? Yes, my partner has read this book. She can report
oh,
back. I'm sure she'll listen to this
yeah,
episode, but yes, she read that book, and I
yeah,
wish I could ask her what happened. That's my thing. Is like Twilight, the films I adored. The
yeah,
books I couldn't get into her writing like that. Like I read
yeah.
New Moon one summer, and I just couldn't. I couldn't, I had to, I didn't DNF it. I just finished it and realized I didn't want to read the rest of her books. But then I fell in love with the host and I was like, oh my God, like,
New
where
Moon's
was
the
this?
worst.
Yeah,
Like
the
if
host
you
was
can get
great.
if you can get past New Moon, like
Hmm.
I honestly I think I skipped most of it because I was like a kid and it was
Yeah.
boring. So I think I was like, where does Edward come
Yeah.
back? You know?
It was just
Uh,
depression, you know?
yeah,
It was separation. It was some, what is it called? When you depend on someone so much, it almost becomes
ooh,
like
yeah, like
toxic.
codependency, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
that was Bella and Edward. I'm
yes.
putting it down right now. I feel like Bella got to a point where she's screaming in her sleep.
Uh-huh. Crazy.
Like I if I was Billy or like or her dad, like Charlie, I would be
I
so
know.
scared. Like my kid's screaming in her sleep, bro. Like
He was
she's
unequipped.
got a gnarly scratch on her arm, bro. It's like it looks like teeth marks, my man. Like what happened? He was nibbling on her like a chicken wing. Like it was scary. I was it's bad. Bella the chicken wing. Bella Bop. He was all over her Bella Bop. He was eating her. This marks to prove it. Like it was
That's
bad. It was really, really
crazy.
bad. No. You know cake pops? How like you eat all the cake pop, all you have left
Yeah,
is like the little twig.
yeah. Oh,
That was Bella's mental
that's what
health.
it's like.
After he left, there was nothing there. There was
Oh,
nothing there. And Edward came back and he thought she, you know, ended her life. It was so sad. But for the
so dramatic. Like
it was
she
so bad. And like Alice being like, "Why would you jump off that cliff, Bella?" I'm like, "Excuse me, girl. She's just living her life, okay?"
she's
Like,
just reckless. Like if I was the parent though, I don't like what would you do with your kid? I'd be
I
like,
don't
get it
know.
together.
You
Like,
gotta
listen,
move,
you ain't gonna
girl.
let no man affect you this way. Like,
You gotta
we're
move,
gonna,
girl.
like,
I
we
would
gotta
send her back
get,
to Arizona with her mom,
yeah,
Florida.
like,
I don't
go
know. Like,
home. This
yeah,
has been
man.
bad for you.
She didn't want to leave, but like for me, that just showed the attachment was very
Yeah.
unhealthy. I was like, oh, this is very unhealthy. It was giving Vampire Diaries on steroids. I was like, at least the Vampire Diaries happens over a series of years.
Yes. This is very like short span.
That's
Vampire Diaries is
crazy.
so good too.
I loved Klaus. If anyone has any book recommendations that give the same energy as Klaus and Caroline, please send those our way because Klaus
I
and
want that.
Caroline, the best enemies to lovers, the
Hmm.
best tension I have ever seen. I have never seen like I hate you but I love you. He's the enemy, he's the villain, but like low key he still deserves love and he's just misunderstood. Like
Oh, it was
and
so
Klaus was
good.
actually misunderstood.
He was misunderstood. They
Yeah.
did him dirty. Did you watch the originals?
I did. Oh, I
I hate this.
did.
I just
Uh
wanted a
yeah.
happy love story. I
I
didn't
wanted
want like
Elijah
a
to find happiness. I wanted Carol. I wanted
yeah.
Rebecca to find happiness. I wanted Hope to find happiness. Like there was not a single character. Niklaus, I
He's
love
so good.
he couldn't win. He couldn't win. Like he just wanted his family all together and he went to the dark side, but like also his eyes, whenever they would change, like
Oh,
Twilight has nothing on the way those vampires would change
no.
the veins and like the way they would like the way they would like pull
It's
the hearts out
creepy.
and like it was crazy. I was like, whoa. I have to say, like, it just ending this episode on a really high note. What is your favorite vampire book since we're on a vampire roll?
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay, let me think. Well, obviously I love Twilight, but I feel like there's been a lot of vampire books, like more recent ones. Let me try to think. Oh, The Serpent and the Wings of Night. Um, Carissa Broadbent. I read that one and I really enjoyed it. And that's a vampire book. But I mean, overall, I guess I would say Twilight, just because that's just like, I don't know. It's just like it's special to me. Like it's just special. I just love it. What's yours?
Ooh, An Education in Malice. That might be my
Oh,
favorite vampire book
uh-huh.
recently. It's a Carmilla retelling. Um,
Yeah.
Her story is older than Dracula's story, which I didn't know. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, and
I didn't know that.
it's dark academia. It's
Uh-huh.
sapphic. It has, if you want to even call it that, it discusses obsession. It
Hmm.
discusses love and manipulation. It also
Oh.
it's a classic retelling, and it just discusses like the opposite of obsession and the opposite of possession is love. You can't be
Yeah.
obsessed with someone and want to possess them. That's not love.
Mm-mm.
And you can see that in the book. There's a character who thinks she's falling for an older professor, and the professor it's not reciprocated, and the professor is able to communicate, you know, I see what you're doing, and I love someone else. Um,
Hmm.
and they sire that character, but they love that character in such an obsessed way. Like they're always watching in the shadows. You're
Hmm.
confused as the reader. Is it romantic? Or do you just want to possess her? Like you just want to
Yeah.
own her in a vampiric way. So it's almost like who's feeding on who? You know,
Hmm.
who's really obsessed here? And then you have a human character who's I love this. She's curvier and she um doesn't take shit. And she ends up
Hmm.
leaving one day to go on like a trip with a friend. And the vampire character, who is her love interest, calls her and she's like, "You left me."
Yeah.
And the human character is like, "I went on a trip. You haven't spoken to me in weeks. Like, I miss you, but I went away." And the vampire character is like, "You left me alone with her." And the call drops. And you're like, "What?" And so you're coming to see the vampire character is actually not the stronger character in the book. The stronger character
Mhm.
is the human.
Oh,
When she comes back, it's because she wants to come back. It's not because she has to. So the passion between them is very much like Edward and Bella, that one scene in New Moon where they do come back together with the
yeah.
Volturi. That one scene, that one kiss scene where like you see how vulnerable he is,
Hmm.
how Bella in that situation was actually a lot stronger because she was willing to leave him. Uh,
Yeah.
he's the one who's like groveling for her to come back. That is the entire vibe of An Education in Malice.
Oh,
That is the entire vibe.
I
Is the
love a
characters
grovel.
like dark and moody, but when they're alone,
Hmm.
they're very vulnerable. Like
Yeah.
they literally are like they have to feed on blood and it is what they have to do, but as a person, they're
Hmm.
incredibly vulnerable and they crave love as much as the human craves love. And they're a new vampire, so they're just learning.
Yeah.
But their feelings are valid and their love is very reassuring. But you do
Yeah.
have a darker entity in the corner who's like, I created you and you will do A, B, and C, which is very obsessive and abusive. So it's a push and pull. Who will win? Oh, it was such a good book.
That sounds
By S.
insane.
Gibson. Very good. And she has another
Yeah.
book called A Dowry of Blood, which is about the wives of Dracula.
Oh, I've heard of that one too. I
And
didn't
the
know that
very
was the
first
same
chapter
author.
is like, I'm sorry I had to kill you, husband. Like I didn't want to.
Oh,
It's I heard it's really good for like Halloween. I heard that
yeah.
blood is very good for Halloween. But this episode low key became about vampires unintentionally. But yeah,
I love it though. That's good.
we love a good vampire, you know? And who knows, maybe a future episode will be about wolves. Maybe we'll discuss our favorite
Oh,
books and stuff like that. You know, give a
oh, I
little bit
would
of
love
love to
that.
the wolves, give a little bit of love to the pack, you know? Who doesn't love a wolf? Who doesn't love a, what was it? In Twilight, they were like big baseballs on like a stick, and that was your love interest, this CGI baseball on a stick, you know?
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Did you see, last thing I know, we're about to end this, where
okay.
he has to put on the, like, they do the CGI wolves and like
The gray
Taylor
body
Lautner's
suit.
in the green bodysuit, like bent forward and she's petting him? I can't get
Oh,
past that.
I think the only thing that saved that whole film genre for me, like
Uh-huh.
critic side, the wedding in
Oh,
Breaking Dawn was like the dream wedding.
that
Like,
was beautiful.
wow, like the song, like Flightless Bird coming back around and like all the lights, like
Hmm.
what a wedding. Like if money was not an object, that's a dream wedding. And like for
So
Bella to be
nice.
so anxious when she saw him and she relaxed,
Hmm.
wow. I
It's beautiful.
and also Charlie like say like when she says don't let go and he says never.
Yeah,
Charlie.
he's the best.
Charlie. I just I saw like Charlie bit my finger. I genuinely like
Oh.
I loved him and I when Bella had to change and everyone was like, you're gonna have to tell Charlie that you're dead. I was like, oh my God, what? I was like, Charlie has been nothing but loving. He's gotten beaten up this entire film series. When Bella in the first movie had to tell him off so she could leave.
That was heartbreaking. He was just trying to love her. He remembered she wanted purple in her room, and then she was like, "I want to go back with my mom." And I'm like,
She was a little
"She's
shit.
ungrateful."
I'm so sorry. That was a
But
really, really crappy move. Okay. I love Kristen Stewart. And not just because she's a lesbian. I love Kristen Stewart. And I and I stand by her. But you know, at the end of the day, Charlie deserves better. He
he
was a
deserved better.
good man. And listen, a lot of Bookstagram girlies, they love Charlie for many different reasons. All right. They
He's a
love
deal.
Charlie. They like a little silver fox. And we saw him find love in the last movie.
Yes,
He wasn't alone, which
I
was
love that.
he found love. So oh, and then Jacob had to reveal himself to him.
That yeah, the way everything kind of resolved itself at the end. But Charlie's so easygoing. He's just like, I still love Bella. Like
He didn't
that's
care.
still, yeah, he don't care.
You could have just told him all this stuff right away. Like we
Yeah,
could
he could have helped him or something. Like
yeah, all these lies for what? Like you're for what? So,
for what?
what was the reason? I don't know, but I have to say like I would love to see a love story. It's just thinking out loud, but I would love to see a love story between Charlie
and a vampire, someone who works in law
Oh,
enforcement, who knows about wolves, who knows about everything, who's just healing his heart again, and then he meets someone who's everlasting.
oh,
You know what I mean? Like, what would
yeah,
he's an adult, like the conversation would be a little different, you know?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would love to see a vampire romance between an adult
Hmm.
and a vampire and kind of like how that would work, you know? I don't think I've ever seen a vampire romance where the adult already has a kid,
Yeah,
or
that's
the
very
adult's like,
interesting.
yeah, they're a little older. If it were to change, they would be 30 or in their 40s or 50s forever. What if they already have medical issues?
You
You know what I
know, like, oh, you should write fan fiction. I feel like you have great ideas for like they should do this. Like, I
mean? Thank
think you'd be
you.
great at it.
I think it's more just like food for thought. There's so
Yeah,
many vampire books where I'm like, oh, like that's an interesting approach. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like I also always wondered what it would be like to read a book where we had characters like Elijah from the Vampire
Mhm.
Diaries.
Oh,
I remember he kept saying, "I promise to protect you," and then something would happen, and his promise would be broken. I would love
yeah.
to see like him have to relive his early vampire years. Every time he breaks a promise, he has to lose something. You know what I mean? Instead
Oh,
of time, he loses like a memory, something like that, like almost like
yeah.
vampire dementia, something like that. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
that would be very, very interesting. So I've recently been rewatching the Interview with the Vampire series.
uh-huh.
Guys want a good like gothic vampire story, do check for trigger warnings because there is an abusive relationship. But it is such a interesting approach to vampirism and like what is a vampire relationship when you are interracial? What
Hmm.
is a vampire relationship where one of you literally can read the other's mind and you feel like you know everything about them? Is it still consent if they didn't tell you you could read their mind? Like it's,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like what if you're both vampires but one's stronger than the other? Like you can live forever.
Yeah,
So if your partner hurts you and you're a vampire, you'll heal. Is it still abuse? Yes, it is still abuse. But now you're in a permanent abusive relationship forever. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah,
things like that where like vampires aren't just romantic, it's scary. Think about it. Like
yeah,
imagine if Edward, the way he was in Breaking Down Part One, he was horrible to Bella once she got pregnant. He was
yeah.
a
So
really bad
controlling
partner.
and yeah,
Like if he was a human being, imagine getting pregnant and your partner just ignoring you, like in your most vulnerable time. Like I just couldn't be Team Edward after that. I there were his actions to me. That's not what a partner does, much as a husband.
no.
What? I couldn't justify it. You know what I mean?
Okay, but then you were Team Jacob and he imprinted on the baby.
I
So where
did.
are we?
I did. I was Team Jacob up to a certain point. I was Team Jacob up to Eclipse.
Okay, you have to
Up
kind
to
of end the whole series being like, I hate men. Like he
Yeah.
loves a
I
baby
did
and
come
he
out a
like
lesbian.
is a bad, yeah.
Dude, I came out a lesbian. And I
This
went
is
into
what did
Twilight
it.
Street, I came out gay. And I can admit that. My girlfriend is Team Edward. I don't think about that very much because that's a red flag, and I don't want to think about that. And I'm sorry, honey. When she hears this, it is what it is. But she told me on our first date, she's like, "Oh, I love Edward." I'm like, "Didn't he do A, B, and C?" And she's like, "We all make mistakes." I'm like, "Those are some pretty big mistakes." But we can do, that's the beauty of books is that like maybe book Edward was wonderful, and maybe film Edward is just Robert Pattinson,
Yeah,
and that's why we forgive all his problems,
it's
they
easy.
have a thing for sickly looking 30-year-old men,
Yeah,
and
greasy
nothing wrong
men.
with that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I can't tell you how many thirst traps I've seen of Carlisle recently. Like everyone wants a piece of Carlisle. He's like a key lime pie. Like there's no color in his skin. Like there's nothing there.
He's
It's just
so
ice.
white.
Ice. But they was really, you're cuddling with an ice cube. Like there's no warmth. Like, are you serious right now? Like if you're cramping and you cuddle up to him, the only reason he's good for you is if you're in a heat wave. Like you don't
He's so
like
cold.
what do you mean by that? Like your concealer will always be like you kiss him, it'll look like a splotch of paint because there's no color on him. Like
Yeah.
I literally,
Nobody thinks this through.
I
You're a
think it makes
critical
it
thinker.
fun. And don't even get me started on Jasper. Don't even get me started on Jasper, okay? Are we just gonna
Oh,
ignore the fact that man looks like he's constantly in fear? Like, he didn't get
he's
hot until like the last movie.
yeah. They did him dirty. I'll be
His
honest.
eyes were always like this. They were like, and Alice was like, "Isn't he great?"
He's so good.
I'm like, girl, you're a solid like 20. You're fantastic. You're so loyal. And this man's telling you how he had a super toxic, horrible girlfriend in Eclipse who
He
made
was
him.
a war veteran. We have to give him a break.
We do have to give him
That
a
was
break. Thank you
wild
for your
too.
service. I mean, I will get thank you for your service, but I
Thank
also
you for your service.
thank you for your service. But also, but he also didn't he like train the newborns, like the newborn
Yeah,
vampires?
yeah. He was a bad man,
Was actually a very bad man.
but
Like,
we forgive it.
and even Carlisle worked for the Volturi for a long time.
Hmm.
There were no heroes. There were no heroes.
Everybody's bad.
I would love to see a vampire story with the Volturi. Like one of them is super evil and becomes
Uh-huh.
good.
Oh, you're giving all kinds of. You know what? Somebody's gonna listen and start writing these and be like,
You know what?
"Wow,
Take them. Take them. I have so
just
many ideas. Take them, please.
just give
Take
you
them.
an acknowledgement."
You know what? Or even better, Stephanie Meyer, maybe you should expand. I would love to see
Oh,
another Twilight film as long as it's new characters but the same world.
do you know that 50 Shades of Grey is a Twilight fanfic?
I did know that.
So
I know
look at that. You
that.
can literally just be like, this should be this way, and you can do it. Isn't that insane?
Wasn't it like Master of the Universe? It was something like that.
Yeah, I
It
don't even know. But that's
Yeah,
pretty wild.
I think it was called like Master of the Universe. It was something like that. And
Yeah.
I think that's my only thing with like 50 Shades. I love me some spice, but I need you
Uh,
to be a consent queen or king or person. I I just I feel like Sarah Kate's praise. If you want a
yeah.
BDSM spicy consent
So good.
full like very good entry level to that world, praise by Sarah Kate. Wonderful book. And it had funny parts too. Like, it wasn't all
It
spice.
was so good.
It was
Eyes
actually
on Me in that series, so
mm,
good.
I wanted to read that one. I
Okay.
just read a book called Hush Hush. Different author.
Lucia Franco? Lucia
Yes.
Franco?
Yes. I've had
Yeah.
my eye on that book for so long. I
I
wanted to read that
started it.
ever.
It
Yeah,
was a DNF for me.
I heard it gets good. I just haven't read it yet.
I
Why'd
didn't
you
get to that
start
part. I don't know. I feel like my librarian here, she was like, I think everybody, it's not like if you DNF a book, it's just like right book, wrong time. She's like,
it?
you can go back later in life and maybe Hush Hush will be that for me. Maybe I'll go back and be like, wow, like I really love this little smutty book.
I
But
don't
it just didn't do anything for me the first time.
That's how I felt when I first tried to read, what was it? I think I was first trying to read Archer's Voice, like the first or second chapter. I couldn't get
Uh-huh.
it. But then I circled back a few months later after starting a new job and like moving to a new apartment. And at the time, I just needed a book where a character was in a similar position as me who was just figuring things out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that book, when I did try to read it again, I fell in love. I actually recently got the annotated version, so it has all the notes from the author
Ooh,
inside.
I love that one. Yeah.
I love that. I can't wait to read it in
So
that
pretty.
format because I listened to the audiobook my first time and
Mm-hmm.
then I read a physical copy and now I own a copy. And there are just some books that I wanted a copy of my own because
Mm-hmm.
giving it back to the library, it's almost like all my notes and all my stuff. I had to like take it out. I would much rather just
Yeah.
have a copy of my own that I can always reread it whenever I want.
Mm-hmm.
And I can loan it out to friends who I really trust. I'm that girl. Like if you love a book but you don't want to buy it and I have it, like I would loan it out to a friend, just give it back in like a week or two. If I really trust them. You know what I mean? 'Cause
Yeah.
books should be accessible to everyone and libraries don't always have, more recent books or more taboo books or
Yeah.
books by independent authors all the time. So
Yeah. I think that's a really good like I'm the person that like if I have a book that I want a friend to read, I just buy it and I'll be like, "Here, I got you your own and now we
that's so
both have one."
sweet.
Because I just don't like I love my books and I like want other people to talk about them with me, but I'm just like, I don't want you to have mine. Maybe I'll get you your own. And
That's
then
the
they can
best
just
gift
pass it on
ever.
if they want to.
That's the
And
best
then,
gift in the world. To give someone a book or a
mhm.
thoughtful handmade gift. Like
Oh,
if
it's
someone
so
gave me like a
nice.
shirt or like a
Mhm.
bookmark, that's gold to me. Like
Yes,
anything handmade, anything thoughtful.
I love that.
If you think about it, books are just like people's ideas. It's like
Mm-hmm.
thousands of pages of ideas, you know? It's the same thing with like a podcast. A podcast is just like it's almost like when you like look at a book when it's unbound, it's all these pages and spreads from
Yeah,
else. That's what a podcast is. It's just like an audio version of ideas, you
I
know?
love that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's just, it's a safe space to read and talk. And at the end of the day, like, let's say I try to read Hush Hush. Maybe I'm not a huge fan. Maybe I am a huge fan. But at least I have someone to talk to about it where it's like, hey, was this presentation of a spicy scene, do you feel like it was, respectful and consensual? Did you get the
Mm-hmm.
ick from this scene? I actually really enjoyed the spicy scene. Like there's a podcast called I think it's called like What the Smut. It's something like that. They
Yeah.
they discuss spicy scenes even when it's not for them with so much like confidence where
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like, you know what, I should read my book out in public, even though I'm reading it on like my little Kindle. Like
Yeah.
it's it's like what for me may make me like kick my feet up and feel all the butterflies and like honeybees in my tummy. For someone else, they may be like, you know what, this is mild. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not that great. You know what I mean? But at
Yeah.
least options out there. Like there's dragon romances, there is librarian romances, cafe romances, like Fade to Black, and then there's super, super spicy, throw your body into the sun like books, So
Yes.
yeah, my family always jokes that they're gonna put one of my relatives, her spicy books on what is it? We have this thing called a portal, and it'll read your
Mm-hmm.
books out loud and you can hear it throughout the
Oh,
house. And they always joke, we're like, oh, we're gonna put her audiobooks through the entire house and just press play. I'm like, stop it. So they're
oh
gonna
my gosh.
I'm like, listen here, spice, this is a safe, spicy house. So, yes, if someone likes spice, that's their business, So, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
no one's like, my grandma's like, I'll listen to your podcast. I'm like, don't do it, grandma. No.
listen, you are so brave because the first thing when I made a bookstagram, the first thing I did was block my mom. I'm like, I love you so much, but like, I don't want you to know what I'm reading or what I'm talking about. Like, in my family, like, I think I let my sisters follow me now, but I'm just like, it feels so vulnerable to, like, especially growing up in a household, I guess maybe my household wasn't super like sex positive or like, so I'm just like, my mom cannot know what I'm reading, but also I don't know.
I guess my mom always taught me that she would rather me communicate now than
Yeah.
stuff being occurring and you don't know what to do or you're not safe.
Yes.
So I was very blessed to have a mom. My mom also had me at 19. My mom met my dad in high school. So
Wow.
they're friends now. They're no longer together, but I think that's why I can enjoy books like what Hannah Bonham Young writes, where
Hmm.
there is sexy scenes. But there's also like it's honestly the most realistic sexy scenes I've ever read, where they slow
Yeah.
down and like they say like, is it okay for me to touch you there? If they have a disability, they help them move in a way that they can feel comfortable. If they have
Hmm.
anxiety, they take breaks if you see them zoning out, or if they're having a panic attack if something else is happening.
Yeah.
It's not like the characters have like sex, but they also like they have a lot of aftercare and like compassion, and
Hmm.
they take breaks, and it's just like I'd never read books like that before.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like had I read a book like this in high school, had I
Hmm.
read a book about like a surprise pregnancy, but they're friends and they work on it together and they have found family. She also has characters in her books who choose not to have kids, who are married.
Hmm.
I didn't know growing up that was a thing. I didn't know
Oh,
you had the option to marry someone and you don't have to have kids. I didn't know
yeah.
that, So, and it wasn't traumatic, it's a choice. But then there were other people who, intimate thing to say is that I want to have kids with you. For a lot of people, that's very intimate, you know?
Yeah.
So books kind of give me the freedom, and I hope they give other people the freedom that even if you yourself don't do it, I hope some books show people inspirationally, you know what, maybe I will ask someone during spicy time, hey, is this okay?
Yeah.
Do you like that? Or, maybe I'll ask my partner before we get engaged or married, do you want to have kids? And if you don't, I'm okay with that. And
Hmm.
let's discuss why we don't want to have kids. You know what I mean? Like almost
Yeah.
normalizing these conversations because in a lot of family situations, there is a lot of judgment. There may be a little bit of shame, a little bit of nervousness, even as
Yeah.
adults. Privacy feels safe, but also like we don't even realize that there's so much like stigma,
Hmm.
sex, around kids, around the shame around kink and around what you
Hmm.
do and don't like. It's almost like there's room for privacy, but there's also room to kind of destigmatize like what's
Yeah.
good and what's not. Like there's no good and not good. It's what you and your partner are comfortable with or what you are comfortable with. That's the beauty
Yes.
of books is that there's 1,000 people all over the world who read a book that you also read who enjoy the same things you enjoy. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing
Yes.
wrong with that. So if you like vampires, people cosplay as vampires.
Hmm.
People do that, and they have fun. Like live your life, you know what I mean? And if people look at the photos of you at a vampire, like there's an Anne Rice convention in New Orleans where people dress up as vampires
Yeah.
party and they have a good look and they're vampires. You know what I mean? Um, but there's also places where like you have Christian romances and you have cowboy romances and you have monster romances.
Yes.
No shame. And there
Mm-mm.
shouldn't be. Like life is so short. Like, you know what I mean? Like read what you
Yeah.
want. And if someone's listening to an episode and they don't like it, I just hope they fast forward or pick another episode, like
Yeah.
and that's okay. Like let's be kind. It takes so much energy to be mean. Like just be kind, So yeah, and you'll find that with both of us. I feel like we're both pretty cool people, pretty kind people. Like I said, Twilight as an example, it may be an ick for a lot of people. There's scenes in Twilight that I don't love, but it's also just fun. Like
Yeah.
all things aside, it's fun to like run through the woods and crawl up a tree and be like my spider monkey. Like it's fun. Like, to be swept off your feet and then to know a redhead is watching you in the darkness. You know what I mean? It's scary and it's fun. Like
Yeah.
it could just be fun. Like it doesn't have to be super deep and analytical. Like it could just be fun.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that. So, Midnight, do you approve of this podcast? Yes, he does approve of it. He does. He's like, this was awesome. He also loves Twilight Mayad. He turns his back away from movies and shows he doesn't like, and he points his face towards the TV when he does like what's on TV. So,
Oh.
yes, he's incredibly sassy. But I do try to find him like marking my books all the time. So I do think he approves of this podcast though, 100%. But thank you
Oh.
so much for coming on this episode with me and talking about vampires and books and icks and happiness. And where can they find you? Tell them about your social media one more time.
Yeah, so you can find my podcast where we'll be doing an episode together that will be coming out very soon as well. And that is at My Little Book Love Podcast. And that's on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And then also my personal bookstagram is at Nico Books. And yeah, I just post more bookish content. But thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun talking
Thank
today.
you for coming. I can't wait to have you on future episodes. And thank you for being my guest on this episode. This is
Yeah,
amazing.
thank
Awesome. Okay.
you.
Thank you for coming. We did it.